kind of financial preparations did you make before the move? And what in hindsight would you have done differently?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. You got some really good questions. So, one thing I did in preparation financially was I made two different budgets. So, I was already budgeting, but I made a separate budget with what would it look like once I move, and then I compared
Mhm.
the two. And I realized that some stuff was cheaper, some stuff was more expensive.
Hey, 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 Savvy Squad. Welcome to another episode of the Dr. Sev Talks Money YouTube and podcast, where we empower women to manage money confidently. Are you thinking about moving to another country? In this episode of Dr. Sev Talks Money, I'm joined by Tiffany Grant, creator and host of the Money Talk with Tiff blog and podcast. Tiffany made the bold decision to leave the US and relocate to Jamaica. And on today's episode, we're going to talk all about it. Tiffany, welcome to the Dr. Sev Talks Money podcast.
Hey, hey, hey. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share.
All righty. Okay. And I'm certainly excited to have you because I am the opposite. I left Jamaica to come to the US. So I'm sure we will have a lot of things that we can talk about.
Mhm.
But before I get into the meat of the podcast, I love to kick it off with an icebreaker question. If you had to pack only three non negotiable items to take with you when moving to another country, what would they be and why? And I'll share mine in a little bit.
Well, I will say for me, it would have to be my computer,
Mm.
my phone,
Uh,
and my podcasting mic. I think I can do only because I'm thinking about I have to still make money. I have to still, run my business.
yeah.
So those are three things I have to have in order to do that. And because I can't live in another country without any funds. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's understood. Well, for mine, it's very similar. I was smiling when you were sharing because I was like my phone, because my Kindle is on there, my Bible is on there.
mm,
So I need all of that. And then my computer so I can run my business. And then my garden. I don't want to take my garden with me. No, that's
not
not
your whole,
possible.
not
But
your
I
whole
would.
garden. Making
Yes,
that
I
noise.
want to take my whole garden, my okra, my tomatoes, my all of the stuff that's beautiful and out there, the watermelons. Oh my word. Yeah, so I would want to take my garden with me.
Gotcha, gotcha. I did so to piggyback on that, I didn't have a garden back home, but I actually have a garden here. So I started a garden. So there's an option.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so relaxing. And there's nothing like picking your fresh fruit and vegetables and making your own meal from it. It's just it does something. It's hard to explain. Because I just made some okra and tomatoes and peppers together, all from my garden. So,
Now, I mean, if we're gonna talk about food, because I am a bona fide foodie, and I just made a post that mango season is about over.
oh,
So
I'm
I
so
did like
jealous.
I know. Oh, it
I'm
was
so
so wonderful.
jealous. I'm so jealous. I love mangoes.
Mhm.
But all right, so let's jump right into it. Before we even jump into the logistics and the moving and all of that, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a bit about your work as a personal finance professional?
Yeah, so my name is Tiffany Grant, and I run Money Talk with Tiff, which is a financial education platform in the form of a blog, a podcast, social media presence, so on and so forth. But my main goal is to educate people about different money topics, and mainly small business owners and entrepreneurs, or people that want to be entrepreneurs. So that's kind of like my niche. And as far as personal finance is concerned, I've been doing this since 2017. I absolutely love it. It's definitely a labor of love. We do not roll in the big bucks.
No.
However, it is very fun and I'm very passionate about it. So, for me, this is kind of like my life's journey, my life's goal. And that's pretty much me and what I do.
Okay, awesome. And for those of you listening, we are going to be sharing all of Tiffany's contact, her link to her podcast, her website, all of the stuff. So you'll be able to connect with her. So what sparked your decision to move from the US to Jamaica?
So there's a few things, and I love when people ask me this question because it's so multifaceted.
Mhm.
So I would say the main thing was health concerns and health reasons. So when I was in the States, few months before I actually made the decision to leave, I was dealing with a lot of health issues in terms of like high blood pressure, swelling. I was seeing like at least 2 to 3 specialists. They couldn't figure out what was going on with me. And nobody can figure it out. Well, I went to Jamaica on vacation because I was also newly finalized divorced.
Mhm.
This was last January. And I was like, I want to take a vacation to celebrate and then also, just to relax and enjoy. And so I went to Jamaica for like 2.5 weeks or so. And while I was there, I actually forgot to take my blood pressure medication. And when I got back, I said, well, I haven't taken it in so long, let's just see what happens. So when I went back to the doctor, they were like, oh, your blood pressure is normal. And I said, and all the swelling
Mhm.
and everything had started going away. So I'm like, interesting. They were like, the medicine must be working. And I said, well, I haven't taken that medicine in like a good month now. So they were like,
Mhm.
really? They were shocked. And they were like, well, whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it. And that's
Yeah.
when it clicked and dawned on me. I'm like, shoot, whatever it is I'm doing, keep doing it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, is it the food? Is it the environment? Is it the stress level? Like, what was it about Jamaica that had such a profound impact on my health? So that was one thing. The second thing is I just love it here. I love the weather. I love the people. I just love everything about it, honestly. And I'm actually Jamaican. My dad is Jamaican. So I have, family history here as well, not
Mhm.
particularly where I stay, but in the island in general. So I've always felt this connection to the island.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then I also realized when I was there for that trip, matter of fact, when I came from my first trip back in 2022, I realized that I can work from Jamaica. So
Mhm.
that kind of, quelled that feeling of, okay, what about work? What am I going to do? And when I took that first trip, I was here for like a month. So I was
Mhm.
like, okay, this is doable. I can kind of do both. So between having the digital nomad type business and
Mhm.
my health concerns, and then also just trying something different.
Yeah.
In life, I always have this philosophy where I'm like, whatever you want is on the other side of fear, or everything you've
Yeah.
ever wanted is on the other side of fear. So I was like, when I feel fearful of something, that means maybe I need to go ahead and do it. And I always said, like, all the way up to the day I left, I was in tears the last week,
Mhm.
but up until the day I left, I said, worst case scenario, I can always just move back and life goes on as normal. So I'm like, I'd rather take a chance and try something different that I've already seen has had positive effects on my life than to just sit back and say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because you want to make sure that you're maximizing your life to the best way
Yeah.
you can. And I'm actually in the process of researching where I want to move now that I'm retired. And
Mhm.
my US dollars need to go a little bit further than it can
Right.
in the US. So I am actually researching several places. And of course, me being an accountant in finance, I have spreadsheets. Okay.
For days.
Yes. And so that leads me to the next question. What kind of financial preparations did you make before the move? And what in hindsight would you have done differently?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. You got some really good questions. So, one thing I did in preparation financially was I made two different budgets. So, I was already budgeting. I've been budgeting for years. That I love budgeting. That's like my thing. That's how I started Money Talk with Tiff, budget queen. But I made a separate budget with what would it look like once I move, and then I compared
Mm-hmm.
the two. And I realized that some stuff was cheaper, some stuff was more expensive. One thing that I didn't realize was expensive was schooling. So I moved here with two kids, two of my three kids. I have well, now they're 11 and 2. When we moved, they were 10 and 1. But I was like, for my 11-year-old, I didn't realize how much I would have to pay in school. So even though he doesn't go to a private school, he goes to a public school. Here in
Mhm.
Jamaica, there's no public transportation. You have to buy
Mhm.
all the books. You have to buy all the uniforms because everybody has to wear a uniform and all these different things that I didn't account for back home. Like back home, he went to a public school that was also in, it was a Title One school, sorry, a
Mhm.
Title One school. So everybody got free lunch, free breakfast,
Mhm.
and there's school buses. So I didn't have to pay for transportation, and there was no uniform. So all of that stuff, I kind of didn't factor in enough, I don't think. So that was a surprise when I first got here. And then also, I will say water. Because water here, I live in Negril, Jamaica, so on the west side of Jamaica, and water can sometimes just cut off. You
Mhm.
can have it one day, you can not have it another day. And so I am blessed enough to have a tank on the house that I rent, but I will say it was like day 2 or 3, and I'm having to call the water truck because it was like mid drought season. So that was another thing that I was not prepared for per se. Luckily, I had already had money saved up, and I could get through these hiccups. But there were some things that you just, even if you do an extended trip, you just don't get. Like even me being here for a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, my son is not enrolled in school here. When we did have water issues, we could call somebody and,
Mhm.
they got it settled if we're in the Airbnb. But me being here and actually renting on my own, understanding what all that entails. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. I can relate to the water issues. Yes,
Yeah.
there's some things I'm putting on my list, like infrastructure and different things like that. And can I live with this or not? And the pros
Mhm.
and cons of different things. So I definitely understand.
But I mean, to go back to your question, though, I did have quite a bit I had a little bit saved up. I'm not going to say a ton because that's just not how I roll. I just be like, oh, let's just go with the flow and see what happens. But I know I did at that time have, like, for instance, my tax refund. I had a little bit in savings, and I also had investments and stuff too. So I'll say I had a decent amount saved up. But it wasn't like, oh, I was preparing for this for years. Like it was
Mhm.
like a decision I made in February and I moved by May. So it
Wow.
was pretty quick. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And here I am thinking by the end of next year.
And see, and that's my thing. Like, we can get into analysis paralysis and then we end up
Mhm.
not making any moves at all. So for
Mhm.
me, I have another philosophy. See, you're hearing all my Tiffany isms. My other philosophy is ready, fire, aim. So instead of ready, aim, fire, ready, fire, aim. So get ready enough to go ahead and fire, and then you can always, fine tune it and tweak it as you go. But you'll never know until you take that first step. So there's things that I could have sat here and analyzed and tried to predict and things, and I would have never seen it until it actually happened. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm,
Unfortunately for me, well, I don't know if unfortunately, but my mom, who's in her 80s,
mhm,
I drive to Florida from Georgia to take her to the doctor for her appointments. And so I don't want to be far from
too
her.
far. Yeah.
And so I'm working things out. So that's what the main holdup. Otherwise, and then of course my garden.
If you don't, you can have a beautiful, lush garden. Well, depending on where you
Yeah.
move. I can only
Yeah.
speak for here in Jamaica. I don't know what it is about this land, but this land is extremely fertile and you can
Yes.
plant some of everything here.
Yes, and actually, my dad worked with the Ministry of Agriculture, and he had lots of farm. So we would go with him, pick pimento, and one of the houses that's there, that's owned by me and my sisters, we have jackfruit,
Mhm.
oranges. tamarind, bananas, mangoes, all kinds of things on the land. So yeah, I could create a new garden.
And I'm like, don't that garden sound like more, stuff that you can't even get where you at right now?
Yeah. All right. So let's talk mindset. What were some of the biggest mental or emotional shifts that you had to make before and after the move?
Yeah, so I will say, well, I already talked about one, and that is to kind of look fear in the face and just go for it anyway. I was very scared because, mind you, I've never lived in another country, let alone another state in my adult life. I had moved to North Carolina when I was 12. So I'm like, everybody I know and everything that I know is here, in this place. And so that was one thing that was kind of nerve wracking, to be honest. And like I said, I was in tears up until the day I left. Like that last week was extremely hard. And I almost talked myself out of it.
Ah,
Almost talked myself out of it. I almost said, well, just maybe now is not the right time, because things started like snowballing back home. Like things just wasn't working out. And I'm just like, what is going on? But I said, you know what? No, I have a strict deadline. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm doing it. So I just did it regardless of what else was going on. So that was one. Second, I would say culturally, it's a lot different. So culturally, like even though I'm Jamaican, living here and being in the actual Jamaican culture is completely different than American culture in a lot of different ways. And so I've had to do a lot of unlearning to relearn, because I also learned that in America, there is a lot of programming that happens.
mm,
And so for me, I had to unlearn and also just realize that a lot of this stuff that I've believed and thought and stuff my whole life, it's not, it's not the reality, or
mhm.
I'm not going to say it's a lie, but it's just not, what it is in real life. I've
Yeah.
realized that America is like its own microcosm. Like there's
Mm,
nowhere else in the world that thinks
um,
like Americans. So
yeah. I would
just
agree. I would agree.
yeah, I mean, in all my travels, not just here in Jamaica, like everywhere I've been in other countries, they're like, you can tell an American, if that makes
Mhm,
sense. And so just getting out of that and embracing a different culture, and in my opinion, a better culture, I feel like it's like every day unlearning and relearning something new. So I think that's an ongoing mental thing. So being open to actually embrace wherever it is you're moving to, not just saying, "Oh, well, this is how we do it," or "This is what you need to do," or whatever,
mhm,
whatever. It's more about, okay, how are they doing things different, and is this actually better for me and my well-being? So, like for me, to give you an example, when I moved here, I don't have a washer and dryer. I wash all my clothes by hand, hang them out on the line. That's something I never really did in the
yeah,
States. I have never been without, very rarely, a dishwasher and a washer and dryer and a vacuum. But those
mhm,
are things that I do not have here. And so at first I was like, oh, I need to get a washer. And then I was sitting there washing my clothes by hand, and I'm like, but this feels good. Like this is relaxing. This I'm like actually sitting with my thoughts and, thinking as I'm washing and stuff. And then same thing with sweeping, instead of
mhm,
using a vacuum. So some of that stuff going to the and I know this is gonna sound crazy as somebody who's a tech head, but going back to like these fundamental and foundational things
mm,
that I just think it's better for health and well-being, in my opinion. And then also to that point, my son, when we were in the States, he was diagnosed with ADHD. And here, I've noticed that his symptoms aren't as bad. So he's actually able to focus better and things of that nature. And I attribute that to potentially because they don't have devices. They don't have computers and tablets and stuff in the classroom. They learn here like we did. We have the
Mhm.
blackboard or the whiteboard, we have our notebooks, and we have to write everything. So his handwriting has improved. He's not really dealing with too much ADHD stuff anymore. So it's just, I think going back to basics, I think America really handicaps us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
When it comes to just functional, fundamental stuff, we don't do.
Yeah. And sometimes convenience costs. It costs our health sometimes,
Mhm.
mental health. It costs so many other things. Um, and we have to really step back and see how, yes, it's convenient, but at what cost to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, speaking of that, that's one thing, for instance, back home, everybody eats fast food all the time. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, like every day you might have at
Mhm.
least one meal. But here, even the fast food is like
Mhm.
from a restaurant. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yes.
like, it's not like these, I mean, they do have the big chains like a Burger King or, what have you. But, a lot of the fast food, like if you're going somewhere, you go and order some real food and then
Yes.
you take it
Yes.
with you. If you like, for instance, there might be soup and porridge on the street. You might get some
Mhm.
soup and porridge, but it's all fresh and it's all good
Yes.
and it's not overly salty or chemically laden. So yeah, just going back to your convenience thing.
Yes, yes. Yeah, because I grew up, I did not do fast food when I grew up in Jamaica. And
Mhm,
even now, I don't do a lot of fast food because I'm used to cooking at home
mhm.
and, having my porridge, my soup on Fridays, and my this on Saturday or big meal on Sunday, those kinds of things. So let's talk a little bit about some pros and cons. What are a couple of maybe pros and cons of benefits and drawbacks of you moving to Jamaica? And I know you mentioned a few, but are there some other ones that you want to mention?
Um, I think more pros. One would be community. Back home, I had my house for 7 or 8 years or so, and I barely knew many of my neighbors. Here, I moved in like the first week or two, and I knew almost everybody on the lane. So
Yeah.
I think community is held in much higher value here. And even, actually, matter of fact, the other day, my car needed to go to the mechanic. I already had an appointment, but I wasn't feeling good. And my neighbor actually drove my car to the mechanic for me. Because I needed to keep that appointment. So it's like there's definitely more community here. We're always doing stuff for each other, checking on each other. Everybody says, "You're good." You good?
Mhm.
So I really love that. I'll say, let's see, a con. Another con would be, I think for me, just because of how active I was back home, and this kind of goes on the other side of community, there's not much like business networking and stuff like
Mhm.
that, like that type of stuff that I'm used to. Which, don't get me wrong, I can fix. I just had this conversation this morning, but that piece I think is missing for me as far as like the networking. In the States, we're used to going to networking events and doing this
Mhm.
and doing that, and that's kind of few and far between here where I am. Now, I heard that it's better in Kingston, but I'm
Yes.
in Grill, which is more of like a touristy, not like a Kingston. So I feel like that's one con that I really miss is just that community of like business owner friends and co-working and that type of stuff. Now, people might say, but Tiffany, you can go work on the beach. Do you really need coworkers? But yeah, and that's, I think that's another misconception too, real quick while we're on it. I don't go to the beach every day, not even every week, honestly. There's some other expats here that, they go to the beach often, but when you live here versus visiting is completely different.
Mm. Yeah.
So, even though the beach is as close as I've ever been to a beach in my life, it's like, and I love water, don't get me wrong, I still have life. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
isn't that funny how that works? Because it's the
mm,
same thing when I was in Jamaica. I mean, the beach was right there, and I just went on special occasions,
mhm,
because I guess because it's there. And here, even living in Atlanta, there's lots of um, things that you can do. But I was like, I'll go next year. It's there. I know it's
mhm.
there. It's available when I'm ready. So there's no urgency.
Right, 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 right. And but I feel like that's what people are like, oh, I wish I could go and live on the beach and do
Mm,
beach, beach, beach. And I'm like, when you live, it's completely different than
yeah.
visiting. So
Yeah, yeah. It's not going to be 100% honeymoon stage. Life
no,
happens.
right. Right.
Okay. So, for anyone who's listening and maybe considering an international move, what are maybe 2 to 3 key pieces of advice that you'd give them today?
Yeah. So, one thing is to definitely do your research. So, see what the visa requirements are, see what the citizenship requirements are, that type of thing, because you don't want to be somewhere illegal. So,
Mhm.
so I kind of said that tongue in cheek, but it's real. You want to make sure that you abide by the laws of whatever country you're deciding to move to. I'll also say do research on all of the essential stuff. So what does housing looks like? What does food look like? What does transportation? That's another thing. Like what does all of that look like? Also research healthcare. Like what would that look like wherever you go? So, do they have good doctors, or would you be considering going back to the States for your care, or just considering what that looks like? If you have young kids like me, considering their schooling and stuff like that, of course. What I loved and what I've learned is that I really enjoy this curriculum better than the US curriculum, because I don't know what they're doing with Common Core math. But
You have to do 20 million steps to get the answer.
I don't understand. And I realized that here they learn how I was taught. So I'm like, this is way easier, and especially for a kid that's neurodivergent. So that was a plus. Also, a plus with the schooling here was, as you can see, I'm Black, and all of the material has Black faces, which was important for me. Being somewhere where you're underrepresented most of the time, and then being somewhere where you are the majority is like completely different. It just feels different. So I'll say consider that. Consider language barriers, if any. Like if you're going to somewhere that doesn't speak English. I know even here, for instance, I had somebody come visit. Because they were like, oh, I want to see if I want to, move to Jamaica. I said, well, come stay for an extended period. And I offered up a room in my house. But while they were here, they could barely understand what anybody was saying. They would always look to me like, okay, what they say. Kind of consider that too, even though it is English, it's a different dialect. So, consider
Yeah.
that. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and culture. Like I said before, culture. Understand what's appropriate in the culture, what's not appropriate. Like to give you a funny story, I was told I eat mangoes wrong, and so I learned the culturally appropriate way to eat mangoes.
Tear it with your teeth. You do
Yeah,
that, you do that.
look, I'm not gonna say what I did because they said do not tell nobody you used to eat mangoes like that. But I learned the appropriate way. So all of that to say, get appropriated to the culture, understand the culture, and realize what's important and what's not important. I'll say another cultural lesson I learned here was you always greet, always. So you
Mhm.
always say good morning, good afternoon, good
Mhm.
evening, good night, even. And in the States, it's not like that. You walk around, you say good morning, good morning. People looking at you like what's wrong with you, and especially depending on where you are in the States. So I think just understanding those little nuances and learning those nuances will help you go a long way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, do they still call older people like Mr. Brown? Oh, Miss
Mhm.
Brown, and you never say the person's like name. When I came here to the U.S., it was an adjustment to call my supervisor by the first name
Mm.
because I was used to saying Mr. Brown, Miss Brown, Mr.
Mhm.
John, or whoever. So it really was an adjustment.
Oh yeah, like here they have manners. They have manners
Yes,
here.
and if you don't speak, you need to speak. Why are you not speaking?
And see, one of my issues, just being fully transparent, is my voice is very low. Like in person, my voice is very low. And so, I'll say good morning, but sometimes people don't hear me, which, my Jamaican side is like, Tiffany, you need to, talk Jamaican. You need to be a little loud. It's just not in me. So, when I say stuff sometimes, maybe people don't hear me and then they're looking at me like, okay, so she's not going to say anything. So I've also kind of learned to, make my voice a little louder. So that
Yeah.
way, culturally, because if not, you're going to end up with, I'm not going to say enemies, but people are just going to be like, like,
Yeah, yeah, she too
Mhm.
standoffish or something like that. Yeah.
It's completely
Yes,
different.
yeah, and Jamaicans can tend to be loud, and you think they're gonna fight. No, they're just passionate when they're arguing a point. They're so passionate, and you think you're gonna come to blows, and no, they're not.
No, I've heard so many. Well, I can't say it on the podcast, but I've heard so many explicit, explicit words, and I'm like, "Dang, what's going on over there?" But it's all good. People buying drinks for each other afterwards. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with before we talk about where they can best contact you?
yeah, I think if you didn't get anything else from this episode, is to research and analyze, but don't overdo it. Make the step, see what happens. Worst case scenario, like me, I still had my house back home. I was just renting it out Airbnb, and I still have my car and everything back home. So I was like, okay, if things don't work out, I can just go back to the usual. So I'm like, take the chance, see what happens. Worst case scenario, you go back to where you came from, and all is well. So don't think that even though it is a big decision and it's a hard decision, there's a lot of people out here doing it. There's actually a huge expat community here in the grill. Matter of fact, let me put a plug real quick. I'm an admin for a Facebook group called Black Expats in the Grill. So if you want to join us, please come on. But there's a lot of people that's already out here doing it, been doing it for years. There's expats that have been here for 20, 30 years, And so don't think that you're alone. And wherever you decide to move, there's probably a Facebook group for it. So check it out.
Yeah, and I'll get that link from you and I'll put it in the show notes too, because I am interested in exploring that.
For
So before
sure.
we close out, can you tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to connect with you or work with you?
Yeah, the best place to go is my online real estate, moneytalkwitht.com. So that's moneytalkwitht.com. That is my home base. You can find everything it is you wanted to know about me and everything you don't on the website. So
Yeah.
definitely check it out.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching, it's I have it up on the screen, and definitely will be in the show notes. So, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me on the Dr. Sev Talks Money podcast. I am sure that there are going to be a lot of people who may have questions, and I will have your information so they can go contact you and learn more, because I want to learn more, because I need to let my little retirement money go a little further.
No, that's real. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All righty. So as we wrap up, please remember to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, leave a review and a rating. If you listen on Spotify, leave a rating. And as you are completing your ratings, please remember that we love the number 5. Until then, this is Dr. Sev saying stay savvy, and we'll see you next time.